going on, people? At it again. Got another topic in mind. This time, actually, it's pretty starting to become a broiling hot topic, and it's been I ain't gonna say in my face this week. It's been crossing my eyes on and off, especially within the last couple of days. I remember I first heard about this story on Yahoo, and it had this little short if skirt. You know how you look at Yahoo, you got the big articles, then you got the little sublines or sub headlines or whatever you call them under them. And sub headline I read was like, guess who's Americans playing for a foreign basketball team in the Olympics. So I was like, ooh, let me see this. I thought it was a guy at first. I clicked on it anyway, and had the story about Miss Becky Hammon, the all-star guard who plays for the San Antonio Silver Stars in WNBA, who also plays professionally at Russia during the off season, which is, I think, a unique thing, because if you're that good to play in two leagues and get paid for it, you're doing something for yourself. Well, of course, I had to look closer at the situation. I was also able to encounter ESPN. Outside the Lines did a interview called Russian something, I don't know, Russian the Judgment. That's the appropriate name of the article, and it basically tell both sides of the story of about Becky Hammon and USA Basketball, her situation, why she is playing for Russia instead of the United States of America basketball team. Of course, basketball being competitive sports in both respective countries, but dealing specifically with the Becky Hammon situation, all I can say, I don't blame her. And if anyone that's not familiar with Becky Hammon, like I said earlier, she's a professional basketball player, plays in the WNBA, and also plays in Russia. She was in a situation where she plays for Russia, or she's going to play, or she's been playing for Russia into the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, which is causing a little bit of controversy over here in the States, in a way. Also, I just want to remind you that this, to be honest with you, is nothing new outside the States. Over here, and the reason I say this because it commonly happens to an extent in soccer, which I will explain in just a second. But it was another article actually that got on me a couple of days ago, somewhat in relation to the Becky Hammon article, indirectly, where actually I believe I listened to a podcast on the Thunder and Herd, Colin Cowherd's radio show, and he brought up the same thing, talking about the NBA draft. And the NBA draft had a lot of freshman college players that left early, got drafted like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 in the first round. I mean, literally, if it wasn't a high school freshman, it was a foreigner or international person, mainly from Europe or whatever, that was getting drafted real high. And Cowherd brought up a good point, and also I read an article in Yahoo.com about more players are going to play for Europe. That is, players that are coming straight out of high school, because, you know, the NBA, they put out the restrictions saying you got to be at least 19 years old to join the NBA or to get drafted in the NBA. So more players are going to Europe, or apparently, I don't know if there's more players right now, but I think more players are starting to consider Europe as a possible option, just in case they're questionable about their draft status, or they just want to, you know, play pro right away and stuff. Now, there's other issues as well that I've been thinking about in both stories in relation to the Becky Hammon situation and the players playing overseas in Europe and stuff. And like I said, you got one issue where, you know, you're coming out of high school and you can go to college if you have a scholarship or stuff like that. That's one thing. If you have the opportunity, there's another opportunity if you're given a lot of money to play basketball. I mean, that's, to some people, it's a no-brainer decision. To other people, is something they really got to think about. And that's on you. And I wish I had that option back then when I was coming out of high school, but I don't. Anyway, going back to the Becky Hammon situation, you can't blame her. You can't really blame the lady. I mean, you talking about this, basketball is her career. This what's her living. This what she makes her living. This what she's comfortable with doing. If all you got to do is say negative about it as a patriotic thing, well, I look at it like this: only a certain number of players can play on the U.S. basketball team or international basketball team. Anyway, so, you know, being raised in America and stuff, if you're not in the top 25 or the top 15 or 16, I mean, not everybody's going to play. I mean, that's just the reality, you know. And I mean, it's also what's on Miss Becca Hammon's mind as well. Does she does she really want to play in the Olympics? And maybe it's in her mind that, well, she won't make the U.S. basketball team. She wants to play in the Olympics. She could probably play somewhere else, and that's probably what she looked at. And really, no one can't blame her on that. I mean, that's up for her to decide for herself. And obviously, she made that decision. And that's what she's comfortable with, and that's what matters. But also, like I said, I have no problem with Becky Hammon doing her thing. And like I said, I saw the television article, and they had the ESPN was interviewing the women's coach, and she had this weird, ugly looking face that I guess, I don't know, she had a bad day or something. But it was so obvious that she didn't like the girl. You know, she didn't like any of the news coming up to her and stuff, talking about, well, you're born and raised in the USA and you're playing for another country, that's unpatriotic. But, and don't get me wrong, I mean, the lady has a very good point about it, but you're looking at it these days, where I was even watching track and field today, not today, but it was a couple weeks ago, international track and field championships somewhere in Europe, and it was a lady from Nigeria running for Spain. Now, this I wasn't really too shocked about this, because I do have Nigerian friends, and they told me there's a lot of, especially from European countries, that they set up things to get better athletes or whatever. I'm not exactly sure the intangibles about it, but there are ways to get a certain athlete on your team for international via through laws or whatever. Get them a passport and stuff, and they can get nationality. Or if you've been playing, I can understand if you were playing in that country's league for like 5 years or 10 years or something like that, and you never played international competition for another country before. And I understand that, but like I said, it depends on the situation and stuff, and it's very, very, you have to be very extra careful in that situation, because we had a situation, I believe, in U.S. basketball where Hakeem Olajuwon, I ain't gonna lie, at the time, I didn't think, to be honest with you, I didn't think Hakeem Olajuwon deserved to be on the I think it was the 96 Olympic team. I want to say the 96 was the 90. Yeah, it had to be the 96 Olympic team. And that's because the fact I heard that he played international ball for Nigeria years before. So it never really made sense. Well, why are you playing for one country, then they got you playing for another? But, you know, over the years, I kind of just left that alone. And I think a lot of times it's the case too, but it's one thing that I think as American people, American sports fans, that we need to realize, and also those executives in the 4 major sports, NFL, NHL, well, I know NHL probably has a little realization to it, but especially the National Basketball Association, especially you, Mr. David Stern. You talking about adding expansion teams in Europe and stuff. I think you need to have a better understanding in how sports are regulated around the world, and take some notes from these other leagues, especially leagues in Europe, on how transactions are done and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to question anybody's business move or tell anybody how to run their league or whatever. I'm just looking at how certain things are situated, because you have a situation, I think it was a college player in the University of Florida left the University of Florida to play a big contract in Europe, you know. And if you have more situations like that, where major prospects are leaving for Europe or to other, where they feel is greener pastures, then I think you need to look at yourself, whether it's U.S. basketball or the National Basketball Association, on how you're conducting your player pool, and how you know, doing your business when it comes to bringing players into the league or whatever and stuff. And you gotta realize that the world is much more bigger than you or what it is. But that's my take on the Becky Hammon situation and the international basketball situation and everything. That leave a message on the thing, you know what I'm saying? And I'll holler at you later. Peace.